Hey everyone, welcome back to another campaign diary. Thank you guys for waiting this kind of little bit of a hiatus. I am pleased to announce I just got done with 2 of my finals. I have 2 more tomorrow, and then I am done. I will be done this semester, and then it will be summer for me, and yes, I'll have, work and stuff like that. But I do believe it will be much easier, and I'll have more time to do the content, and it should kind of keep up. There will be a week here in a couple weeks where you'll miss a video, so just when that happens, don't worry, don't panic. There'll be a video the next week, and it's just I'll be on vacation for some stuff. So yes, but you should be getting a video next week. Actually, plans changed a little bit. So, anyways, let's get down to the reason why we're all here. We're here to find out what's happening to the party. So let's get right down to brass tacks. When last we left our heroes, in our last session, they had sailed across the sea from Curik and returned to their home continent. They had come to kind of arriving in the Elven country and making it to the capital of the city, where Esther kind of was able to kind of take charge as her backstory led her here, which I was a little kind of, again, we talked about how I was kind of slightly cynical about it, but I let it happen. I kind of just said, all right, sure. And it went ahead, and I think it went well. It gave her this great opportunity when she kind of had the moment with her parents, and the party got some cool gear, they got horses, and they kind of got some information that was helpful in finding out that Fritzless is in fact at Renevas, and thus I think the party was like, sweet, we just got to go home to kill Fritzless, to kind of finish this all off. And so basically they ended the session by just saying, hey, we just get on the horses and we ride east. And that was basically where we picked up. We just kind of said, okay, you guys are riding east, you're kind of camping along the way. Basically the only thing that really happened at first was they come, of course, to the border between the Elven country and Bartholomew's territory. And there's soldiers there. Naturally, I described it as, there's a river that kind of follows the border. And there's a nice bridge over it. And of course there's, 2 small kind of little huts, almost like kind of small houses, clearly kind of, guard posts. And there's a couple guards, on the bridge, and they're clearly human, and they're wearing Fritzless's emblem, and they're kind of like, they halt the party, and they're like, what business do you have? And the party's like, we're officers of Fritzless's army. And the party's like, yeah, we don't really recognize you guys. And they're like, oh, that's okay. We're kind of more the diplomatic side of things. We were sent to the elves to go talk to them and try and negotiate a peace treaty, kind of make sure everything was cool with them. And the guys are like, we're going to hang on to you guys. We're going to kind of detain you because we don't recognize you guys. You're not wearing badges. You don't all have badges. A couple of them did actually have Fritzless badges from prior encounters with some of his soldiers, but not all of them. And thus they were like, well, let's hang on to you. They sent one of the soldiers to ride for one of the main garrisons to get someone who might know, someone of higher authority who could kind of definitely say, yes, these people are legit, or no, these people are not legit. And the party was like, okay, that's fine. We'll allow you to detain us. And they took him into the house, and it's 2-story. I described it as it takes them into basically a downstairs, which had some beds and stuff like that. So it was kind of like, okay, you guys are able to spend the night here. And they did that, and they spent the night, and I described it as, and they said, we're going to go ahead and just wait for the officer to arrive, kind of the person in charge to arrive, and then we'll kind of see if we can play things from there. Well, the officer did arrive. He comes back, and he's got a couple more soldiers with him. I described it as happening, the next day, kind of late afternoon. You guys are kind of chilling out. You kind of can hear, the people arrive, and they come down the stairs, and there's an officer. And he looks at them, and the players at this point were like, okay, we're going to try and deceive him. We're going to try and fool him into thinking that we actually do work for Fritzless. And then maybe we could just kind of get, fair pass through the rest of the territory. And I said, that's a good idea. Let's see what the dice say. And, they got Hazel, Elias, and they got Danny up there, and they got them ready. Okay, these are charisma people. And they roll their deception. They roll very well, upper third of the thing. I can't remember the exact numbers, but it was 20 plus with their, insane, I won't say insane, but with their incredible deception modifiers. However, I said, all right, I'm rolling the officer's perception, insight. Insight was what I called it. He rolls a 16 or so. His total is an 18. I said, okay, well, he's got a couple of soldiers, so you guys are going to have to fool them as well. And I was like, that's fair. This is a bit of a, not tall tale. Well, I rolled like, I said, okay, he's got kind of two other soldiers with him, his bodyguards kind of. These guys are also pretty beefy and pretty like, they're a little suspicious. I roll them, and one of them gets a nat 20. And the player's like, well, crap. And I said, I described it as, the officer and one of his bodyguards. Most of the soldiers are kind of like, okay, well, you got badges, you guys could very well be legit. But one of the soldiers, one of the bodyguards says, I don't think so. I don't trust them. And the guys are like, okay. And the player's like, well, screw this. We'll fight our way out. Which I think they kind of, not intended that, but I think they kind of planned that was probably going to have to happen at some point. So they were probably just going to have to say, well, screw it, let's fight. And that's sure enough what they did. And I described it as, they did their best. And the problem was they were fighting up this staircase. And that was a bit of a trick, as like some of the guys had cover who are on the upper stairs, kind of had covers. They were kind of harder to hit. I described it as a couple of soldiers. Like immediately, when the players launch into initiative, the officer, he tells one of the grunt soldiers, he's like, quick, run for aid. And one of the soldiers, is booking. I described it as like, if this guy, I told him basically, if this guy gets away, he's going to alert other soldiers. And everybody's like, okay. Well, the problem was, because it's a staircase, there's a bit of a gauntlet that, yeah, sure, there's like 5, 6 party members, but they can't easily get up because there's still an enemy in the way. And they tried to even push past it, and the guy was able to stop him from shoving past him. And so thus they had to kill the 2 bodyguards and the officer plus a grunt soldier before they were able to even get up to the top floor, where there was about almost a half dozen other soldiers. Well, to try and solve this problem, what they did is Brain came back down. He was kind of in the back, and he's like, I'm going to kind of run over here. I'm going to run kind of more into the middle of the room, and I'm going to take Executioner, and I'm going to try and hit the ceiling. And he takes the Executioner, and he hits on a ceiling, which I said, it's wood ceiling, so you're able to. He's like, I'm trying to cut a hole. I said, sure enough, you succeed. You cut a hole. He's like, sweet. Now with my other action, I kind of want to can I see out of it? I was like, roll disadvantage perception. Well, he rolls an 11 and a 16. And I said, okay, you kind of get sense, you saw some people kind of, in this direction, in this direction. I gave him very vague directions, and he's like, sweet, I'm going to the guy, Braden's character Scavis is 7 feet tall. And I described the ceiling as being about 7 feet. That was something I told him from the very beginning, when they first came down here, that, Scavis and Garza are probably going to have to kind of hunch over just a little bit. So Scavis has the great idea, I'm going to stick my arm up with one of my hand axes, and I'm going to throw my hand axe, stick my hand up and throw it through a hole. And I said, okay, roll a d8 for direction. He rolls. Okay, and I knew, of course, where all the soldiers were in the room. And I said, all right, roll disadvantage. And he rolls, and, he missed, but it was kind of just amusing just to kind of, his idea of okay, maybe I can hit them. Maybe I can kind of, be almost a long distance person. And it was amusing. And basically he does that. And within the same round, they finally managed to clear the staircase. So they're able to get up the stairs to the top floor. And they cleared up the remaining soldiers without really any issues. However, they weren't fast enough. And the one soldier managed to get on a horse and ride away. So that was something the players knew. It was okay, well, now soldiers will know. Now people know that we're coming. Which is both good and bad. It means higher alert, but it also could mean maybe we might be able to get some aid, potentially. And I kind of had some ideas of, okay, what this would mean for them. And so they said, all right, then we're going to, since I told them, since it's the end of the afternoon, they said, all right, we're going to, kind of rest now. Take a long rest now, before anyone can come. And then we're going to get on the horses and we're going to ride out, early morning. And that's what they did. And basically at this point, it was kind of almost a bit of a travel montage. I described it as, you're just traveling, you're camping. I had them roll a D12 every day for encounters. At one point, they come across a bunch of people there. They kind of look almost like refugees even. They're kind of a little scraggly. They're kind of only carrying a couple things. They see you guys and they immediately just kind of give you guys a wide berth. And the players were like, They knew something was off, and that was what I wanted them to think. Something was off. I described, at one night, you hear screams, you can hear shouts and hollers and stuff like that. And later on, then they kept going, and they so it was, and I think I did this because I had an encounter I really wanted them to have because I thought it'd be good, and I thought there would be a lot of a good plot point, and I think I kind of push on the players, or at least that's how they perceived it. And I kind of was a little bit pushing on them because one of the lighter days is they were about halfway between the border and Renevas. And Renevas is pretty close to the east side of things, so they have to cross most of the country to get there. And they did run into a couple soldiers, but they managed to deceive them into thinking they're on their side, which was a quick encounter, but it worked well. But so towards the end, we're coming near to the end of the session, and they roll their d12 for kind of their daily encounter, and I described it as, you can hear shouts of commotion kind of coming from the south a little bit. You can see smoke kind of billowing off a little bit, and the players are like, all right, and they kind of turn for perception, and I described it as, you can see a village kind of on the far off, smoke kind of starting to billow from it, and the players are like, all right, clearly Peter wants us to do this. And I did, and I felt, the moment they said that, I felt really bad, because I felt like, oh shoot, I've railroaded my players into doing this encounter, which is hard because when I really wanted it, because I thought there's a plot point in it a little bit, a little nugget I put in for the players there, and in addition to a plot point, there's some stuff I really wanted the players to kind of see in it, and I didn't feel like when I was doing it that I was really forcing them. If they had kind of ignored it then, I would have said, all right, fine. But I think there's a little bit of, I had shown them the refugees, they had heard the commotions before, in a previous night, and they were now seeing this. I think for them it was kind of, 3 strikes, you're out, well, sure, well, fine, we'll do it. And that made me feel a little bit bad, but it worked out. But so they said, all right, that's it. We are going to, all right, they just, what's the nature of, the terrain? I said, basically, you got your road, it's kind of along this bit of a ridge, to kind of a little bit of a gully, and, kind of there's and then the village is on a small hill, half a mile away, something you can get in, a couple minutes, on horseback. The player's like, all right. And then I stopped and I said, okay, are you guys wearing your Bartholomew's, militia badges or not? And they said, no, we're not. I said, okay. And here's why, because what it was is this was a village, of civilians, and what I knew is that, okay, if these villagers see just a bunch of soldiers just kind of ride in, they're going to panic even more. They're being, these villagers are already being accosted by some soldiers already, by some fritzless soldiers, and if they see more, they're going to react negatively. But I knew that if they saw these guys riding wearing the badges, they were going to, hail them as heroes, as saviors, and that was going to be important. So I asked that question, and I think the players picked up that, wait, I don't know if they did. I don't know if they picked up on me, kind of figured out, well, Peter's asking, we should probably do it, or if it just made them cause them to stop and think, and because at this point they said, well, we're not, but let's go ahead and let's put them all on. They all put theirs back on, and this was kind of fun because then Hazel Elias says, I'm gonna pull out my panpipes and I'm gonna play an epic tune. And they described it as, as they're going to ride across, this gully, they're going to play epic music, kind of, clearly the heroes charge to rescue the civilians. And it was a very fun, epic moment. It wasn't, incredibly epic, but it gave that sense of heroism, which I think the players greatly enjoyed. And I described it as, you ride into town. I basically told the guys, you ride in, you can kind of, here's what you see as you guys come to the edge of the village. It's not a big village. You can kind of see town square. You can see people kind of running around, soldiers. They said, all right, we're going to dismount. Most of our, hey, we're going to kind of basically ride in. And immediately, they said, we're going to attack the soldiers. So I said, okay, roll initiative. And they roll initiative, and they get a good initiative. They start cutting down soldiers. I described it as, as you come in, you can see, these soldiers have kind of rounded up a bunch of civilians into town square. They're kind of surrounding them. There's a cart with a cage, a giant cage, kind of, an old-fashioned, paddy wagon, if you will, in there, in the town square that they've got a couple of civilians kind of in already. And they start cutting down. The soldiers naturally see them and start attacking them back. Well, then this drow comes out and, starts attacking the players. And immediately Danny's like, I want to roll a perception on her. What does this drow look like? And I described it. He rolls a 17. And I said, you recognize this drow. This is an old party member. And the players are like, wait, what? Esther especially, she's especially kind of confused, but everyone else who's been here from the beginning is like, wait, no. And I said, yes, it is your old party member, Ivy, the drow cleric. This is Sydney's first character, and she had left behind at at Uvrenga. And the players are like, oh crap. And yeah, I had drawn up a bunch of stats for Ivy, and Ivy comes in and starts mashing at people. At one point, when the players kind of keep going, they keep fighting. They tried to engage her in combat, but she kind of, and it only went for about a round. When at that point they had cut down so many soldiers. At this point, I had it when it came to the enemy's turn. I say, Ivy grabs the nearest civilian, pulls a knife from her waist and holds it to the civilian's neck and basically says, put down your weapons or I slit the person's throat. And immediately I had all the soldiers kind of do the same thing. Like they grab the nearest civilian they could, basically like chokehold or like ready to break necks and stuff like that. And the players were kind of like, okay, what do we do? And they set their weapons down. And this was cool. They then got this moment. I said, all right, we're going to kind of exit initiative a little bit. And I kind of gave them a chance to talk to Ivy, and Ivy's like, I have seen the wickedness, I have seen the evil, Fritzless is the good, and of course the players are like, what the crap, you're a drow, yeah, you're evil, but why on earth are you siding with Fritzless? And they were so confused, and she's just like, I have seen the light, I have seen the truth, Fritzless is the good. And the players are kind of like, wow, this is weird. And then I described the bodies drop. Literally, like, a couple of the civilians drop, a couple of the soldiers even drop, and Ivy collapses even. And I describe as, kind of this pillar of light appears on the ground nearby, and out from it steps another familiar face, and Fritzless appears. And he's like, welcome back, old friends. Ha 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 ha. I see you have returned. It is good to see you. And again, they kind of got to talk. And this was the plot point that I really wanted the players to get to. And of course, the players were like, what the heck is going on? And maybe this is a little bit of like, terrible bad guy, tactics of, let me reveal my evil plan to everyone, And he basically says, hey. And they're like, what the heck? He's like, well, I need souls for a ritual. Of course, the players are like, what ritual? He's like, I will be reunited with my wife. And the players were like, well, is this really what you would have wanted? And that was awesome. The moment they played that, I hadn't anticipated it, but the moment they played it, I was like, ooh, that is good. And immediately Fritz is like, it does not matter what she wants. I will be reunited with my love. And I will use these souls, and I will summon Orcus, and I will strike a bargain with him so I can reunite myself, so I can resurrect my wife once and for all. And basically kind of giving away the whole plan, but also kind of explaining on why on earth is Fritzless doing all of this? Why on earth has any of this been going on? Why has he become a lich? Why has he, taken over a kingdom? What the heck is going on? And I think in that moment, I kind of at least told the players. Now, whether they picked up on it or not is up to them. But I basically told them this is why Fritzless is doing everything. And I didn't explicitly say this is why. I just, as Fritzless, I explained everything kind of he was thinking. This is why he had done everything. And the players are like, well, we gotta stop you though. And they all like get ready to wrap up. He's like, unfortunately, I do not have time to mess with you. And he's like, so farewell. And I thought about them fighting him now, but I didn't want them to actually fight him now. So what instead I did is I said, but instead I shall leave a friend with you, another old friend of mine. You two should get along. You all should get along very well. And he disappears, and I described, kind of in his place, a shadow kind of, and when it kind of fades away, a giant skull with a glowing eye, little orbs around it are floating. Just sits there, kind of staring at you guys. And the players are like, oh shoot. And that's where we ended the session. That's literally right where we ended the session. Now, for those of you who can probably guess, and just also because the players figured this out basically right as we were ending things, they have to fight now a Death Tyrant, which is basically a more powerful beholder in the next session. How that's going to go, oh, the players are going to see, but this is definitely going to be good. So, that's what happened, guys. I'm excited to kind of see, what happens next week when the players have to fight the Beholder, and I think it's going to be good. In the meantime, guys, thank you for watching. Thank you for staying in again. Thank you for putting up with the kind of hiatus. We will keep back with our regularly scheduled program from now on. And as always, guys, stay cool.